This is the fourth video in the lecture series for week 2 of Career and Employment Resources. If you haven't already watched videos 1, 2, and 3, please do go back and look at those first, as they're meant to build on each other. In the previous video, we had looked at some resources that fit with the category Who Am I? We had touched on the idea that even just within the Who Am I category, and this is true for all 3 stages in the career life planning model, that there is an abundance of tools, resources, and other materials available out there to help with making career decisions and finding work. And this can be overwhelming for both you and your clients, particularly clients if they go online to try and wade through the volume of information. How do they know what is good information? And they may be relying on you to guide them to resources and will trust you that you're providing them with information and resources that are accurate, current, and unbiased. Remember that clients will make decisions and choices based on the information and resources that you give them. So you need to have a system for evaluating resources to ensure that you're using and sharing good resources and information with clients. So how do you do that? How do you know if a resource is any good? So we're going to have a look at, we're going to use an example here of a website that you are familiar with. This was one of the Holland Codes assessment tools that you did back in the fall in the theories course. And you were asked at that time to go to this website and to actually take the assessment tool that appears there. So I'm just going to leave the PowerPoint for a moment and remind you of that website that I just showed you led you to this online version of the Holland Codes assessment tool. And this is one of the 2 that you were invited to do last fall. If you didn't do it at the time, you may want to go ahead and give it a try now. It is a very, very good tool generally. But let's try critiquing this. So if you're familiar with this and you kind of have an idea of how it works, and you maybe can recall having the experience of doing it yourself, let's take some time to actually critique this and see if we can evaluate it, decide if this is a resource that you would actually use with clients in the field. So based on your experience of taking that Holland Codes assessment tool, how would you rate or assess its effectiveness as a tool? So just think about that for a moment. Do you think it's a good tool or a poor tool, or it's just kind of so-so? Would you recommend it for clients? And if so or if not, on what are you basing your opinion? And the word opinion is really the operative word there. So you got some impressions and you had some experiences from doing the tool, and then based on that, you made a decision about whether you thought it was a good tool and one you'd recommend, or not a good tool and one that you would not want to use. So what factors did you consider in evaluating whether you would use this Holland Codes tool or not? Was it based on whether you liked it or you didn't like it, or how hard it was for you to do it, or whether you found the results useful or not? These are all factors that are certainly worth considering, but they are very subjective. And you need to really have an objective approach or a framework to evaluate resources that you might share with clients so that you're being consistent in your approach and it's not just based on whether you liked something and whether you personally found it to be useful. I'd like to introduce to you here the ABCD model, which can be used as a way to evaluate resources and information. You're going to be using this model to complete an assignment in the course, and also you can use this model when you go out in the field to evaluate various resources that you are considering so that you can ensure that you're taking a consistent approach in assessing resources and then ensuring that you're providing clients with good resources. So this gives you all of, in one little visual, all 4 of the criteria that are part of the ABCD model. So we have authentic, budget, client appropriate, and design. So that's what the ABCD stands for. Then you can see under each of these criteria, so these big headings are called criteria, underneath are specific factors that feed into these criteria. And for each one, you're going to look at these factors and evaluate a resource based on the factors to then decide if the overall criteria, how you might in fact rate a particular resource. And I'll show you in just a moment what this looks like. But let's take a moment and just understand what each of these factors are about under each of these headings. So when we look at the authentic heading, the A and the ABCD, the factors that we want to consider as part of this criteria are, is it current? So is it up to date? This can vary with the type of information. Some things, just because they're a little bit older, are not necessarily bad. So the Holland codes, for example, have been around for a really long time, and but they're still quite valid. It's a framework that's really stood the test of time. How accurate is the information? Is it correct and verifiable? And how complete is it? Is it comprehensive? Does it provide a complete and clear picture? Is it objective, or is it designed to inform or persuade and sell? And this is a really important point when you're looking at websites, to ensure that they are not, and this kind of fits with the next factor, balanced, that they are not just trying to convince somebody to come into a particular field and not presenting a clear, balanced picture that includes a full description of the pros and cons of a particular field. And what is the reputation of the author or producer? Is this a reliable source? So that's the authentic factor. Criterion. Then we go on to the budget criteria, and there are three factors that fall under this heading. So cost. Is there a cost to you, your organization, or the client? And sometimes there are really excellent resources out there that are completely free, and there might even be some things that you pay for that are really not so great. So it's not a given that just because you're paying for something that it's actually good information. Redundancy is another factor. Does it repeat information that you already have or that you can easily get somewhere else at no cost? And then longevity, how long will the information be accurate or current? So really important to look at dates and consider whether something has been updated. As one example, in the National Occupation Classification System, that information on the Canadian government website is usually updated, I believe, every 5 years. So you want to look at the date that's listed, when that information was first posted. And as we get closer to the end of that 5-year window, then you may want to go and have a look at other more current sources to ensure that the information is still accurate and up to date. Another criteria in this model, ABCD, is the client appropriate criterion. So we look at 5 factors under this heading. First of all, gender. Does it portray both genders? And really that should be changed to, is it kind of gender neutral? That's really what that should say. Is it gender neutral and does not, show all occupations that are outdoors working with equipment as being affiliated with one type of gender, and other types of occupations like nursing as being affiliated with another type of gender. So in a way, we want to modify this to say that it is portraying all genders with equal potential and equal interest in careers. And then we want to look at the age factor. Does it relate to the audience that it is given to? So we want to be careful that if we are using resources for mature workers who've had, pretty impressive careers, and now they're making some career choices to change their occupation, that we're not giving them something that maybe is written for high school students that's pretty elementary. There are times that there are aspects of certain things that, even though it's targeted to one type of audience, in terms of age or anything else, that it could fit for another. So you just want to evaluate that factor pretty carefully. Language and literacy. So what level of English is required to use and understand the resource? And very important to consider this. If you have someone who's got any kind of reading challenge, or perhaps their ability to read English is not very strong, that you really want to consider, what are you giving this client? You don't want to give them, if they're having challenges with reading, a 10-page document to try and wade through. So you really want to think about that. And anything that you are giving to clients, that it fits with their level of capacity to absorb the information. Diversity. Does the resource relate to and reflect a diverse population? Very important. Learning styles. Does the resource fit with the client's learning style? So some clients would work better watching a video. They would get more from that. For others, they're okay to read material. For others, they may need to get involved in a hands-on way. They're more kinesthetic in their approach. So those are the various factors that fit under client appropriate. And then we want to look at the final criterion, which is design. So what's the format? Is it presented in a useful format for the target client group? The appearance of it, so use of font, graphics, size of the resource. Of course, a lot of websites now, no matter how small the font is, you can expand it to fit with what your preference is. But again, just look at the resource from that perspective. And then organization, how user-friendly is it? Is it easy to navigate or find information? And congruency, does the title reflect the content? Does the information flow logically? Sometimes titles can be very misleading, so we want to make sure that it's clear to the client what they're getting when we give them a particular resource. And then readability, is it written in clear language? Is it interesting, inviting? Is it engaging? And so on. So those are the ABCD criterion, and what you're going to do under each of those criteria is that you're going to rate the resource using a 1 to 5 rating. So you're going to look at the factors underneath the heading and then decide based on a 1 to 5 scale whether it meets those factors or it does not meet those factors. It would get a rating of 1 on a particular criteria if it did not meet the factors under the heading. It would get a rating of 5 if it really did a great job, an excellent job of meeting the factors, and then you can rate others in between. So this is one of the things you're going to be doing for the evaluator resource assignment, is to evaluate it using the 1 to 5 ABCD model. The detailed factors under each of the criterion may not apply to all resources, but the 4 criteria should be considered when you're evaluating any resource. So let's have a look at the Holland Codes assessment tool, and I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this, but just show you if I were rating it at the website that I just showed you a few minutes ago, this is how I would rate it. So current, is it up to date? I'd probably give it a 4, just because there may be, I'm not 100% sure, but there may be other assessment tools that may be more up to date. Maybe there are certain occupations that are not reflected in the Holland Codes tool. Is it accurate? Is the information correct and verifiable? I would give it a 5 on that. Is it comprehensive? It's pretty complete, but maybe not entirely complete. Again, there may be occupations that have not been included that are new in the field, in any field, and so it's a little bit incomplete from that perspective. Obviously, it's objective. It's not really designed to persuade or sell. It is designed to inform. Balanced includes pros and cons. I didn't really feel that felt with this particular tool because it's not really there to create a picture, but just help you assess, which of these things seems to fit best for you. And then you can go out and research information and get a balanced picture. And then, is this a reliable source? And I would give it a 5 because Holland Codes are very reliable. So that's just the authentic criterion and gives you an example of how you might rate the different factors under the authentic criterion. And so if we look at these ratings overall, 4, 5, 4, 5, and 5, generally it's pretty good. It's not perfect. So you might give it a rating overall on the authentic criterion of 4.5. And yes, you're allowed to give half marks. So that gives you an idea of how you would go through each of the factors for each of the criteria and evaluate a particular tool. So I'm not going to go through the rest of this. You can read these yourself. You can see that I've given it ratings of 5 for cost, 3 for redundancy, 4 for longevity. And again, this is just based on my own general impressions and my experience with the tool. But overall, probably for budget, I would give it, I would probably give it a 4, 4.5 because it's pretty free. Client appropriate. Again, gave it some, ratings here. It doesn't really, I should really have put not applicable there because it doesn't really, there's really nothing in it that's designed to talk about gender in any way. It's just presenting all of these options and you're going to rank them yourself. Relates to the audience it's given to. It's a pretty straightforward language and literacy, so I gave it a 5. And diversity, does it relate to a diverse population? I gave it a 3. I think there probably is room for improvement with respect to the tool from that perspective. And does the resource fit with the client's learning style? Well, we only really have one option here, and that is to do it visually because it's in a text form. So I put a question mark because I'm not sure what that would look like to make it more kinesthetic. I guess auditory, you could, if someone had a reading program on their computer, that they could have that program read the options out on the tool. So, and the same for design. So you can go through these and have a look. And based on my ratings here, I probably would give design a 4.5 or almost a 5 based on the ratings that I've given here. So all of this, I'm not going to go through this because really this is my own assessment of the tool, and this is what you're going to do when you start looking at the resource that you're going to select for the assignment. So that's the ABCD model that you're going to use, and then you are going to apply it to the evaluator resource assignment. So you're going to use this ABCD framework. You're going to research and find a resource that you're going to choose yourself and evaluate. This assignment is worth 25% and is due at the end of next week, week 3. My apologies. I just made a little correction on this slide. I realized that the assignment was previously worth 25%, but has been modified to be worth 20%. So I've just changed that. So my apologies for that. So it's worth 20% and is due at the end of next week. You can choose any resource that you want, a website, a print publication, a podcast, or a video. It must be a resource that you are familiar with. So as you would any resource that you'd be giving to a client in the field, you need to go through the resource and really internalize what it's about so that you can actually do the evaluation. There is an instruction package and a video for the assignment posted on Blackboard under course assignments and deadlines. And sorry, let me just go back to this. So you're going to do this assignment for this week that's due at the end of next week, week 3. And then in addition, you are asked to begin compiling your list of Who Am I websites. This is going to be, as I said, important for you, whether you're doing the case study in the final test and also working in the field. So look at the websites listed in the lectures that have been done for week 2. Look at the websites listed that fit with the Who Am I stage of the model and try out as many of them as you can. Try to find and take an assessment on at least one other website that fits with Who Am I. You're going to need to, when you're doing the case study, you will be able to use some of the resources from the course, but you will also need to find some resources on your own to apply. So this would be a good time for you to look for one or more other Who Am I resources, and you can also use one of those then to evaluate in your assignment. So as I said, you're going to need to compile the list for all 3 stages of the career life planning model. So that brings us to the end of the lecture videos for week 2. As always, don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions at all.